to go to YA back then, you had to have committed murder, attempted murder, armed robberies, the things that you would go for life in as an adult. But back then they couldn't try you as an adult, so they can only hold you till you're 25 years old. So I'd be in there with guys that literally kill 4 people, and they're getting out. And the thing about YA is that you have the toughest kids from each gang throughout California. And they put you all in these places, and in those places, there must be predators and there must be prey. And so you could be the toughest guy in your gang and all that stuff. Well, a lot of people didn't make it. When I say they didn't make it in YA, they didn't make it with their dignity coming out. So it was something that changed me. I would say that time in my life changed me.
Buenos dias, Gunners Collective TV. Back at it, you already know. Like a torta with some bad habits. Bye up, bye up. This is a good one. Let's get to the intro. Welcome back to the channel, and if you haven't already hit that like and subscribe button, make sure you go ahead and do that. Put your notification bell on all so that way you're directed in the direction of the dope content that I stay kicking, and I highly appreciate the support, man. I'm very humbled by it. So what was more dangerous, the California Youth Authority, C.Y.A., or the California prison system? Well, I'm here to tell you, to each man their own. It's different for everybody, right? For me, bar none, no questions asked, California Youth Authority was way more violent and vicious, right? And why is that? Because you got a lot of hothead youngsters with the gangbanging mentality straight off the streets, trying to prove themselves, trying to earn street cred in jail, and trying to establish dominance over one group or another, man. It was crazy. The Bloods, the Crips, the Asians, the Norteños, the Sureños, the Bulldog, the Woods, everybody was handling fucking business. And I'm going to tell you right now, it was one incident after another after another. Look, I could tell you, if you take 365 days of a year in Fred C. Nellis, the youth authority I did the majority of my time at, there was 936 incidences within that time. So that's just goes to show you 2 or 3 fights a day on the average, riots, melees, stabbings, battery packings, and all kinds of other different incidences. So when I heard this guy ask this question, what was more dangerous, C.Y.A. or the California prison system? Don't get it twisted. Depending upon which prison you hit in California, oh, it could be very dangerous. Them level 4 180 yards are treacherous, but there's a lot less violence and incidences that occur on those yards because of the respect factor and because it goes from 0 to 100 very, very fast. So prison is a dangerous place regardless of what level you are on. But when you start hitting level 3s, level 4s, 270 design 180s, for those that don't understand, refer to the ex-convict handbook, most officially written by Wes Watson. He'll tell you, even though he was never there. It is a situation that becomes a very dangerous situation. But the reason why YA to me was way more dangerous was because of the attitude, the games that were being played, the rules, the beginnings, the inklings in the beginnings of prison politics that were played out in YA. You got to understand, a lot of these youth authorities were tapped in with the prison system. They had uncles, dudes had family members, fathers that were somebodies in the system. And literally the California prison system controlled the youth authority. Okay. Wheelas would come down through YTS from Chino prison, which was right down the street. And them guys right there at YTS basically ran that C.Y.A. like a prison. Okay. That one was one of the most violent youth authorities there ever was. Preston, notorious. Preston reminds me of Tracy Prison. Preston was gladiator school. Preston, for the very longest time, the North and South situations were on fire. Then when the Bulldogs decided to break apart from the Norteños, Bulldogs and Norteños were going at it every single day. And both had a lot of numbers. The Norteños were the majority in the Northern California facilities, but I'm going to tell you right now, man, the Southsiders and the Bulldogs were pressing. They were handling their business. They were establishing hardcore, right? So what you had was a lot of youngsters, like that guy said in the beginning, that were locked up for big crimes. You didn't go to the youth authority for stealing a car. You didn't go to the youth authority for stealing a payday candy bar or for burglary, right? You had to have several burglaries. You had to be a repeat offender. You had to be where the judge says enough was enough. This guy needs the next level of incarceration to teach him a lesson. I'm going to tell you right now, everybody that was pretty much in there, like that guy says, was the hitters from their neighborhoods. So you had every gang represented in the state of California, North and South, Crip and Blood, Asian gangs, everybody. And the street politics and the prison politics were all mixed up. So you had street gang members that hated each other because they were rivals on the streets, and they were still acting out in the youth authority. See, it wasn't one of those everybody joins everybody and we're all united. There was Southern United Raza, but they were definitely not united. The Norteños as well. There was a situation where it was, each man on their own. You had your crew, you had your group, but that didn't mean that they were going to save you in everything that you got caught up in. It was pretty much a dog-eat-dog world. Now, the Bulldogs were the only group that I could say that all stuck together. Regardless of what barrio or what clique or what neighborhood they were from, them guys, when they got locked up in the youth authority, Bulldogs put all the north side, the east side, the west side shit to the side, and they were all just dogs. And they needed to, because they didn't have the numbers to sustain the assaultive behavior that was going to happen to them. That's just the truth, especially when they broke away from the Norteños, because they took on a great adversary. They already were beefing with Southerners. They were already beefing with certain Asian neighborhoods from Fresno that came into there. But when they broke off with the Norteños, that's when all hell broke loose, and it was on and cracking. And best believe both were worthy adversaries. Now, as far as the North and South issues, well, that was already being played out well before I got to C.Y.A. See, when I got to the youth authority, I understood that this was the top of the top as a kid. This is where all the bad guys went, where all the worst of the worst went, right? Everybody that was either a hitter from their neighborhood had got caught up in a violent crime or was pretty well known for their neighborhood. What happened when you stepped into those gates in C.Y.A. is you started all over. None of that meant anything. You might have some homeboys from your neighborhood that are there that know your get down and know what you're about, and that might help you just a little bit to getting your foot in the door with certain politics that were being played and games that were being played. But you had to show face. You had to handle your business. You were going to be heart checked. You were going to be accounted for. There was going to be a lot of violence in that system. Now, depending upon where you went, your age factors, all case factors came into play, right? But that didn't mean you weren't going to get into a scuffle or two eventually. Everybody did. There's not one person that was in the California Youth Authority that just skated by. It wasn't built like that. It wasn't meant to be like that. It was meant to fucking beat you into submission. You either were going to submit to the gang members and be a soca and start sucking chorra, or you were going to be about your business and fight till you couldn't fight no more and then fight some more after that. That's how it was. Now, my journey took me all over the place. It took me from Northern California to Southern California, back to Northern California. And best believe when I got out of C.Y.A., look, I got out of prisons on 6 different occasions, including violations and new charges, right? And I could tell you right now, I was always happy getting out of prison, but getting out of the youth authority that one time that I did, that was the happiest day of my life. Before weddings, before births of children, before all that. And I love my family to the fullest. But getting out of the youth authority was like, whew, I fucking made it. I graduated gladiator school, really gladiator school, to the utmost, to the highest degree, and to the next level. The reason why it was more dangerous in prison is the respect factor. Nobody respected anybody in the youth authority. See, in prison, there's a lot of respect amongst other groups. You might see Hollywood movies where it has people at odds, and you might see the disrespectful people yelling on the tier. Those people that yell, that are cell soldiers and sell wolf tickets on the fucking block, they never come out of their cell. They're usually incarcerated and slammed in themselves, and they know they're not coming out, and they're usually J-cats that are doing it. Because anyone who's about their salt, and anyone that's about the business and educated and gamed up, they don't do that. They're quiet on the tier, and they're going to handle their business when they have to handle it. That's what prison is, a bunch of men doing time with respect for one another. And hey, it's business, nothing personal, and there's nothing unusual about that. So you'll see a lot less incidences in prison. You're actually safer in prison as long as you go with the program and do everything that's expected of you by your group. Now, every group has different politics. Every group's a little bit more treacherous than the next, right? So I can't say for a Southsider how it's going to be. He can't say for a Norteño how it's going to be, vice versa. And you can't say for the blacks how it's going to be, or the whites. All you can say is every group has their own shenanigans being played out. So that's prison for you. Yes, it is a violent situation if you choose to indulge in a behavior pattern that's going to lead you to violence. If you just go in there and do your time and do everything that you're supposed to do by the rules and regulations set forth in politics by your people, sabes que, you're going to get out good. That doesn't mean you're not going to be involved in a riot or a melee or a hunger strike or whatever's going on with your people. You're definitely going to be involved. But that means you're a lot less susceptible to disrespect and to getting caught up in situations. Most guys that get whacked in prison, it's their fault. Most guys that get caught up in prison, it's their fault, whether it's drug usage behind it, gambling, being fucking a chismosa, you know what I'm saying? Repeating fucking shit that is told to you, you know, being what is that called? A storyteller, or someone who is stirring up, you know, controversy, spreading false information or rumors. These are all reasons to get you caught up. If you're not involved in any of that, if you're just doing your time, you're a solid homeboy, your people are going to respect that. Now, if you're asked to uphold your end of the bargain for that protection, if you're asked to fucking assist the casa, the household, depending upon your group, to get off where you're mad at, then you're going to do that. And you're going to do the time behind that. And that's just the way it goes. You watch the movie Shot Caller. If you haven't, I say go watch it, right? Because he says a line in there, this fucking protection doesn't come for free. You're going to get your fucking hand dirty like the rest of us, right? And that's the truth. There will be no bed space unaccounted for, and there will be no bed space given freely. You're going to earn your spot on that yard. Your reputation is not going to do it. Your tenacity and viciousness is going to be the key, right? And the way you conduct yourself with the utmost respect for everybody, especially within your group. Now, C.Y.A, there was none of that. C.Y.A, you're going to fucking fight her. You're going to be Levon. Leva was different from, see, this is the difference. In prison, you fuck up, it's one and done, usually. Now, they do DPs, chequeadas, where maybe you didn't mess up bad enough to be rolled up off the yard, but you're going to get checked by your people, whether it's writing an essay for the Northerners and doing a whole bunch of burpees, or it's the Southerners stabbing you up a little bit for a chequeada, or the blacks stomping you out, or the whites cutting your head off. Either way, there's going to be some repercussion for every action. In C.Y.A, it was the same thing, only worse, because you were dropped leva. Now, what is leva? That meant you were dicked up. You are not good. You're still there because there was no protective custody for them to hide you out in. There was no S&Y yards or 50-50 yards for you to go. You were going to stay right there on the general population on the main line, and you're going to be beat up, ridiculed, stomped out, spit on, taken advantage of, maybe even assaulted in an SA way the whole time you're there. And it doesn't matter where you go, it's going to follow you. Unless you happen to have some homeboys from your neighborhood that bring you back up, meaning that they put their name on the line for you, they step up for you, and they bring you out of that leva situation. I seen dudes get dropped leva for the most frivolous things. I seen them get dropped for nothing. I seen dudes being advantage taken of them, and there was nothing I could do. But for me to acknowledge or even care about that at that point in time was crazy. I wasn't going to put myself in that fucking situation, especially, I'm going to give it to you guys real and raw right now. I was one of the culprits fucking doing people dirty, dropping them leva on, all that shit, man. And I'll never forget that. And it pains my heart thinking about some of the people that suffered behind some of the bad calls and just the ridiculousness of the games that we were playing. So with that being said, in prison, you can get scraped up or it's a one and done deal. And yes, that's violent as can be. But in C.Y.A, you're going to get beat on and hurt every single day. Okay? Very, very dangerous, very vicious. Also, there was C.Y.A games that were being played. Certain foods you couldn't eat. Certain things you couldn't say because it disrespected people's neighborhoods. And best believe there's someone in that institution from every fucking different neighborhood, and they're going to take something disrespectful, right? You had enemies that were your enemies on the streets coming in, and it didn't stop at the door. Now they want to get off every single day. Survival of the fittest. One of you guys is going to last, and one is going to be a punk. That's how that was going to be in their mind, right? So you had a lot of that going on, especially with the Southsiders. Vatos that were from 18 and Florencia on 38th Street and all these different barrios that didn't get along on the streets. They didn't just come together in the youth authority. eventually, over time, gradually, as they gained their respect and they were known to put in work, maybe did they get that respect enough to be left alone? But it was always on site. There was several times that I see Florencia go into an institution where there was predominantly 18 streeters, man, and it was all day, every day getting off fights. These are the same dudes that would go to prison later on and kick it together because they're flying under a different flag. They're flying under the same flag, right? Whereas in C.Y.A, yes, they were Sureños, they were Southsiders, but that was secondary to what they were first and foremost, and that was from their barrios. So, man, the majority of the incidences I seen that I wasn't involved in was between Southerners and other Southerners. Now, as for the whites in C.Y.A, pobrecitos. They had it dirt bad. They had it mud bad, is it? It was very, very upsetting to see what was happening to white guys in prison and the youth authority. They were not the majority. Blacks and Mexicans were the majority, okay? Whites, especially in Nellis, there would maybe be 2 or 3 if they're lucky on the Colcompa, a 73-man unit. 50 of them are Southsiders, 20 of them are blacks, 2 are Northerners, and they scrape in a couple whites. And the Woods would either have to kick it with the Southsiders and function with their program or get advantage taken of them. There was very few Woods that were really, really about the business, but the ones that were, they were with that shit. Straight up. I don't know how many numerous riots and melees I was involved in with Southsiders where Woods jumped in on their behalf. So that old saying, oh, the whites and the Southsiders are together on some racial shit. Nah, it wasn't racial. It was just that the Southsiders decided amongst their people to look out for Woods that were worthy of the cause. Not every white guy got the pass. Only those that were really with the shits. So for the majority of my time locked up, incarcerated, until I got to maybe Preston, where the Woods had their own car, the Skins had their own car, it was bad for them. Very dangerous, man. There was some bad things going on, things that I seen that I've still never explained on YouTube because it's just not content I want to put out there. It's sad. It's really sad, especially when you know it involves children, and I was one at the same time. Now, another thing that made it worse was the C.Y.A games that were played. Certain handshakes, certain foods, certain things that sayings, you know, like there's only sayings that C.Y.A babies, and when the term C.Y.A baby, I don't know who coined it, but it's a good term, right? Because we were babies there, man. We were young. We were kids. We were gangbanging, and the mentality was real. It was fights every day. It was like street shit. And knives came into play, and battery packs came into play. And look, man, when I went down south, I fully expected to never make it out of there. I fully expected, man, to leave with scars, and I did leave with a lot of scarring, not only on my surface of my body, but mentally, right? Things I'll never forget. Prison, you know, there's incidents I remember a lot, but there's a lot I forgot about. C.Y.A, I don't forget a damn thing, right? It left a very big impression in my life. You got to understand, when you're young, you're very impressionable. That's when you're making the choices in your life, what you're going to become in the future. You're making your stance be known. The person you're going to be is developed right then and there. And when you're put into chaos, into a place, and you're not just put there because you're not a fuck up. You are a fuck up. You are the worst of the worst of what California has to offer, right? As a youth. And when you're placed in a situation where you think you're big and bad from your neighborhood and you're that man, and you see someone big and badder from another barrio, another neighborhood, best believe, man, it's who's the biggest and the baddest. And so when I see dudes do videos where they're like, oh, man, the Southsiders were dominating C.Y.A, they were handling their business. The Norteños, they were handling, everybody was doing their fucking thing, depending upon where you went. There was when we went to Nellis as Norteños, we did not want to be there. There was no cops to beg and cry and plead to say, hey, we're not supposed to be here. You sent us to the wrong place. It was deal with it. Fucking do your thing. Die. Who gives a fuck, right? You want to be bad? Stop playing bad and be bad. Understand that's where you're at in this. And the same thing was going on for the Southerners. You think that they liked being in Preston or Carl Holton or Chad? Hell no, they didn't want to be there, but they had pride, and they had to, you know, deal with the same thing we had to deal with. Man, look, this is what they were doing to the Southerners in Nellis. If they got involved in riots or melees and things with us, they would immediately ship them up north so that way they would get the shitty end of the stick. Now, the difference was we had very few numbers where we were at. They were still trying to process getting us established. The Southsiders, they already were established up north, because the Southerners, being that they're so deep, they sent them to every institution from the beginning, from the 50s, 60s. With Northerners, man, we barely started going down to Southern California in early 90s. That's the truth, right? It wasn't that we were punks or we were scared. There just wasn't enough of us. But when we started to put in so much work in the northern facilities, they were like, hey, we're not going to do the Southerners a certain way and treat the Northerners different. And so, yes, we had to go down there, and it was survival of the fittest, and I survived. You know, there's people that talk shit. Gunner was Levar, Gunner was this. I was never none of that. I was a survivor, and I am a survivor, man. Because the things that I seen and the things that I went through in the youth authority would fucking fuck you up right now, would give you anxiety like I have, would give you post-traumatic like I have, will keep you institutionalized like I am, and all these different things. See, this is therapeutic for me. Talking about prison and why and all that, I don't just do it to entertain. I do that, but even more so, thinking about where I was and reliving those events makes me not want to go back at all. And enjoying life like I'm enjoying it, whether I'm sick or not, old or not, I'm enjoying it with my family, makes me not want to go back. So I'm telling you, anyone who tells you that prison is more dangerous than YA, they might have had a bad experience because they fucked up. But I'm going to tell you, you didn't need to fuck up in YA to experience. You were going to, it was free of charge. You were going to experience it no matter what. So to answer that question, what was more dangerous? YA was more dangerous, right? I seen things. I'm going to do a part 2 on this video because I want to get into some stories that I've never told before. So hit a 1 in the chat if you guys want me to get into a part 2 and tell you about some of the craziest shit I've seen that I've really never spoken on. Okay, we'll get into that. With that being said, I hope I answered that question. It was fucking crazier in YA, way more than prison. Way more. Thumbs up or thumbs down. Heavy's going to be the head that wears the crown. I'm going to continue to strive, struggle, and strive for what I truly believe in, and that's the betterment of all people. This video is sponsored by Barrio Liquors in Turlock, California. If you're in the Central Valley, pull up to the Barrio, get you something icy and cold to drink. Also by Sticks and Stones Yard Service out there in Tucson, Arizona. You get a 10% discount if you say Gunners Collectives TV sent you, man. Make sure that you Google them if you're in that area for some cool yard work to get an estimate. This is the gun. Bang, bang. If you want that part 2, let me know.